Today we are going to be talking about something I haven't discussed in quite a while. The Sony Spider-Man universe of Marvel characters, or whatever that franchise was supposed to be called. Following the critical and commercial failure of both Madam Web and Kraven the Hunter, Sony has seemingly put all of their plans on hold for the future of this franchise, which included a Sinister Six film that they've been planning since the Amazing Spider-Man era, El Muerto featuring Bad Bunny, and a Hypno Hustler movie that Donald Glover was attached to both star in and produce. So let's roll the intro and get right to it. If you like what we do over here on Professor X, or any of the other channels that fall under the Ekpire, we stream every Thursday night over on X2. Tonight we are going to be playing a new game called Guilty as Sock, which you, the viewer, will be able to interact with. So come on over to X2 later tonight and join us for the fun. With that said, let's get on to the video. Now before we get started, I do want to make a correction to a video I made yesterday. I failed to acknowledge that movie theaters do take a cut of the profits of the overall box office gross, which could make a movie's break-even point around 2 or 2.5 times the production budget. In my video, I wasn't trying to paint Thunderbolts as this massive box office success, but instead disputing all of the information I've seen spread by a lot of alternative movie news sites that it's this massive money-losing failure. I apologize for not being able to convey that fully, and if I ever revisit the subject again, I will be sure to acknowledge that. But let's move on to today's topic, which is the Sony Spider-Man universe. So as I mentioned in the beginning of the video, a bunch of the movies that were supposed to be going into development following 2024's releases have been scrapped or put on indefinite hold. The only thing Sony is currently working on is Spider-Man Brand New Day, which is a collaboration with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the animated Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse, which is releasing in 2027, and the Spider-Noir MGM Plus / Amazon Prime series. Now, it's not a hot take to say that Sony has made some big missteps with these movies. Some people seem to enjoy the Venom movies, but they're not very good in my opinion either. But I do think there is a big distance in quality when you compare the Venom trilogy and the likes of Morbius, Madam Web, and Kraven the Hunter. And while most people will look at these movies and say, well yeah, why did they think it was a good idea to make a Morbius solo movie without Spider-Man? Same with Madam Web and Kraven the Hunter. I do feel like there was potential in each of these movies. Recently, Dakota Johnson was in an interview with the LA Times. In the interview, they asked her if she was going to try and make another blockbuster movie again, or if she would stick to where she was more comfortable with indie films. And she had this to say about it. It wasn't my fault. There's this thing that happens now where a lot of creative decisions are made by committee, or made by people who don't have a creative bone in their body. And it's really hard to make art that way, or to make something entertaining that way. And I think unfortunately with Madam Web, it started out as something and turned into something else. And I was just sort of along for the ride at that point. But that happens. Bigger budget movies fail all the time. I don't have a band-aid over it. There's no part of me that's like, oh, I'll never do that again to anything. I've done even tiny movies that didn't do well. Who cares? And I couldn't agree more. The problem with the Sony Spider-Man universe is that it was made out of obligation. Sony tried to jumpstart their own shared Spider-Man universe and it didn't work out the way they wanted to. So they went with what would be successful and more appealing to fans, which was to have Spider-Man in the Marvel Cinematic Universe and share the profits with Disney. But in the meantime, they weren't going to just sit on all of these potentially profitable Marvel characters that were just lying there. People really wanted to see Venom done correctly after Spider-Man 3. And at this point, superhero movies couldn't fail at the box office. Even if they were putting out a subpar product, they would still profit from it. And if that movie was successful, why not kick off a bunch of other related movies in the same universe? It was kind of the trend at the time. Now, the first Venom movie, I will say, I think that is completely what the director of that movie and the writers had in mind. It's not really what I like or what I wanted to see in a Venom movie, but some people connected to it and they enjoy that movie. And you know what? I could say the same thing about the other two movies in the Venom trilogy. Not for me, but the people who enjoyed the first Venom movie definitely got more of what they wanted out of 2 and 3. But then we have Morbius. Right off the bat, we have two writers who are tasked to write a movie about Morbius. Their prior credits include Dracula Untold, which was a movie that was supposed to kick off a a Universal Monsters franchise, but was a critical and commercial failure. The Last Witch Hunter, which was supposed to start a franchise based on Vin Diesel's Dungeons & Dragons character, which was a minor commercial success but failed critically. And they're supposedly making a sequel, but the movie is nearly 10 years old and there's been no movement on that. They have also written Gods of Egypt, which was supposed to be the first part in a franchise, but again it failed critically and commercially, so they scrapped the potential sequels. And their final film before stepping into the Sony Spider-Man universe was Power Rangers, which again was supposed to start a new Power Rangers film franchise, but due to mixed reviews and middling box office results, these sequels were cancelled and the franchise is now owned by a completely different company. So Sony tasks these guys to write a screenplay based on Morbius, which is the beginning of the problem. These aren't two guys who had a really great idea for a Morbius movie, but instead they probably weren't too expensive and they could write a competent screenplay. But there's no passion when you write a screenplay like this. I believe there exists a way that you could make a really interesting Morbius-centric movie, and they went with one of the most generic routes possible. And in addition to that, Sony hires a director that they've worked with before that doesn't have his own vision and does exactly what he's told. Make sure this movie is done by this date, it doesn't go over budget, and if you decide you want to make any creative decisions along the way, you have to get approval from every single board member. And you're hands-free once the movie is finished filming. Every decision made in post-production is going to be done by the executive producers of the movie. Major plot elements are going to be changed, things are going to be taken out, and the same could be said about the other two movies I mentioned. Madam Web wasn't a movie that was made because somebody had some extreme fondness for this character. Sony had the character and saw potential to make money. But the director saw an opportunity to tell a much better story. And when Sony saw those decisions, they probably decided, it's too expensive, and cut them down, making the extremely broken movie that we wound up seeing in theaters last year. So say you're an actor like Dakota Johnson or any of the other big actors that were attached to star in Madam Web. You saw a script and met with a director and you probably thought, yeah, this could be an interesting movie. I also think a lot of them assumed that this was going to be in the MCU, which it may have been at one point. So when changes like that are made before filming, you probably look at that and think, well, I'm not going to give it my all. This movie is going to be a mess anyways, so why would I put all of that energy into giving a really great performance? As for Kraven the Hunter, I don't know what happened with that movie. There could have been a really great Kraven the Hunter movie as well. That movie just has so many problems that I don't even know where to begin dissecting where it went wrong. Sony had potential to make really interesting and well-made Spider-Man projects. Just look at what Phil Lord and Chris Miller are doing with Spider-Noir. Sony just needs to allow creatives to make creative decisions without executives breathing down their necks. Look at what DC is doing with their projects right now. They're not making movies or shows out of obligation. They are opening the doors for creatives to come in and tell them what they want to make. For example, look at the Clayface movie. It is being written by somebody who has a story they want to tell. He didn't just ask somebody to go out and write a Clayface movie who had no interest in the character prior to getting a paycheck. And I think the same could have been done if Sony just managed the Spider-Man universe a little differently. They were too focused on being the next MCU when they should have been focused on being their own thing. That's gonna do it for this video though. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a comment down below to let me know what you think about this. Be sure to check out our live stream tonight over on X2, and I will see you in the next video.